That's out of his own mouth. That's not even an interpretation. He straight up said, I don't care what Tulsi said.
The whole world was looking at Trump's social media, calling for unconditional surrender, saying he could kill the Ayatollah but won't. Where do you think we are at the minute? How close to war is America?
Unfortunately, we have to say that it could be literally any moment. It could be within the next 24 hours, or it could be never. That's the real problem, that it's unclear exactly what President Trump is trying to get done here, what his intentions are, what his objectives are. It's a little bit troubling, quite frankly, that as soon as he finished with his national security meeting, that the first person he called was immediately Benjamin Netanyahu. So certainly it's very clear that he's been exerting quite a bit of influence over President Trump. And whether he goes all the way to actually, ordering military action from the United States against, and of course, the biggest issue is this 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb that our B-2 bombers can build, because Israel doesn't have that. That's one of the things. They don't have the capacities, and they really need it, especially for the Fordo plant, where probably most of the most important restructuring or processing is done for the Iranian nuclear program. And whether Trump does that or whether he doesn't, honestly, it's anybody's guess right now.
And if he does send in the bombers to the Fordo region, the bunker busting bombers, what does that commit America to? Is that what's your analysis of that? How could they do that and stop? What sort of step is that, in your view?
Well, the idea, it appears that the best case scenario for Trump and what he would expect to happen is that he can basically just dictate the situation. I fear that he thinks this is similar to what happened when he ordered airstrikes in Syria. In his first administration, like, okay, I can just launch these missiles and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you do anything in response, because he has already said this, then we'll bring fire and fury down like you've never seen before, and all that kind of stuff. So he thinks that he can come in and have this limited objective operation here, and then presumably he can just like say, all right, we're done now because we've destroyed your nuclear capability, etc. But the Iranians are very clear so far, at least in what they're saying, is that they would regard any offensive action by the United States as an act of war, and that they would then take under fire American bases in the region. And there's a bunch of them. There's lots of very vulnerable targets. And my big concern is that Iran, faced with a potential existential fight like this that could very much go into a regime change, then they would have no reason to withhold fire. And they do have a lot of firepower that can kill and wound and injure a lot of Americans in that region, because our air defenses are not near as good as what the president apparently thinks they are. That's my big concern.
And do you think that Trump, it's hard to work out, these conversations we always have, Daniel, it's hard to work out what Trump thinks, but does he want regime change? Is that a strategic aim of the United States of America? Either is it or should it be regime change in Tehran?
It never has been. The only thing he's said, and this is going really almost to the since his inauguration, he keeps saying, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, but I want to deal with them. They can have a great future. We can have a prosperous and all this. So he doesn't act like that regime change is his issue. Benjamin Netanyahu, on the other hand, is definitely a regime change advocate, and he wants to. He said on American television, yes, if you take out the Ayatollah, that will end the war. It won't expand it. And so it's very clear that that is what they want. They want somebody in Israel, that they want somebody who is going to be pro-American or pro-Israeli that they don't have to worry about. So that, I think, is why he's trying to goad President Trump into taking this action. And that may be in Israel's interest. It's not in America's interest. And I think that all this would be doing was unleashing possible civil war inside of Iran. And this idea that that's going to make things better, I think, is a fantasy, because most of the time when you've tried regime change, especially in Iran, it hadn't worked out too good for our side. And I don't see any reason to think this one would.
Is there the ghost of Iraq in all of this as well, do you think?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of analogies to this, and they're very troubling so. And you can also go back to 1953. There's echoes of that, too, where we did have a regime change in Iran, and it looked good for a while, and then it went sour for a lot of reasons that could have been predictable before. But, the whole thing about the 2003 Iraq war, weapons of mass destruction, trust me on this, don't worry about the intelligence, I've seen it, et cetera. And now here's Netanyahu saying that no, now that even though the U.S. intelligence says that no, there's no program going on, the Ayatollah hasn't given that description, that order to do so, Netanyahu says, no, I know better. And that's where I really have a big problem here, or another one, because President Trump's hand-picked DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, said on March 25th that there was no plan. And then all of a sudden on June 15th, Netanyahu says, well, I don't agree with her stuff. I think this is the case. And then one day later, then now Trump seems to agree with Netanyahu and said, I don't care what my DNI says. That is a big red flag for me, because that's why I say it looks like Benjamin Netanyahu is really influencing Trump even more than his own cabinet.
So so you think that if Israel's saying they are close to nuclear enrichment, the American intelligence isn't saying that, but Trump could be responding to Netanyahu, not his own intelligence?
Well, I mean, that's out of his own mouth. That's not even an interpretation. He straight up said, I don't care what Tulsi said. I think that they are moving towards a bomb, or that they were moving, meaning that he agrees with what Benjamin Netanyahu says, who the day before expressly said he disagreed with what Tulsi said. So, yeah, I mean, you can only call it what it is.
Why is it not in America's interest to get rid of the Ayatollah, have a government in Iran that is not keen to build nuclear weapons, not supporting proxies around the world, not supporting Russia and all of those things? There's a problem with the Iranian regime.
You know, one of the things that we like to say all the time, especially in the Russia-Ukraine war and really all over the place in the Indo-Pacific, rules-based order. We want a world that's governed by laws and by this rules-based order, where there's, you can't just the rule of force. I mean, I think I saw Ursula von der Leyen was, attacking Russia the other day, and Putin, and saying, you're trying to dictate by force. And now we're going to turn and do the same thing because we don't like a regime. We're literally going to kill their leader and blow up all their military capacity, assassinate all their leaders that we don't like, assassinate their civilian scientists. I mean, that's not the actions of someone who wants to have the rule of law, that wants to have everybody in the community of nations following the same set of patterns. That undercuts all of our attempts to say anything to Putin, to hold him accountable, or Xi Jinping, to hold them accountable anything, when we ourselves, when it benefits us, now we'll just kill whoever we don't want. I think it is a terrible precedent. And by the way, it's completely unnecessary for our national security on top of all that. You're just potentially open up Pandora's box. It's all negative, and there's no gain for it.
Do you think he's close to making a mistake?
It certainly looks that way. If he takes this action, I think it will be a very bad mistake, because it's also, even just looking at it domestically, politically, it's splitting his support base. I mean, some of the big names who were behind him are now actively saying, no, this is overreach. This is not what we wanted. We wanted somebody who didn't want to start dumb wars and wanted to get us out of the ones that were there, not start a new one in the Middle East. It is very unpredictable. No one can say, even I can't even say with any confidence exactly what would happen if you won't go into a regime change. But given the history of the region and our actions, it's not likely to go very good. But this could split him. And if it does go bad, if he does it, then, I think Tucker Carlson was right. This could completely ruin his domestic agenda for the rest of his term.
And we're going to see what happens. As you say, it could happen when he wakes up. I mean, presumably he's the sort of guy who could just decide to do it.
Well, it is. And of course, we've moved all the combat power into the region, a lot of aerial refuelers, lots of Air Force power, additional naval power. I mean, we've moved a bunch of stuff into the area right now. So all the pieces are in place if he wants to give that order. That's why it's really easy for him to do. So, anybody's guess as to what's going to happen. I really hope he doesn't, but all the pieces are there if he wants to.
Daniel, it's a thought for all of us to wrestle with today. We really appreciate your time talking us through your thinking on it. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.